I know in the beginning of this video, I spoke of my father leaving when I was 5, and I thought I was really like, "I'm cool. I don't have an abandonment wound. I'm good." But there's a lot of other things besides someone leaving, because that was the misconception I knew for 55 years until I read your work and said, "Oh, there's a lot more to this." What are other ways that people can get an abandonment wound
Well,
besides?
speaking of your father leaving, when you were a kid and he left, you coped with that. Children don't identify their feelings very well. They don't go around saying, I feel sad and possibly worthless because dad left and I wasn't important enough for him to stay. They don't even know how to identify that. It's just a mishmash to kids.
Mhm.
So they play or they get distracted or they do a million other things. They might have a pet and then the pet dies and now they're overreacting to the pet
Mm,
where they didn't have any reaction to their father leaving. But
mm,
the fact that later on in life a trigger can arouse those old feelings that as a child you didn't even know you were having, a trigger can suddenly make you feel unimportant, unspecial, um, bereft in some way. So it's so interesting how we live in a very retroactive way emotionally. But so many things, far less dramatic things. You could be someone who has a slight learning disability, and the other children do their math faster than you do, and they're done quicker. And I must not be special. Or you could be yelled at by another adult
mm,
and feel singled out, and that may make you feel as if all of your worst fears about yourself not quite being as good as the other children suddenly come out. The things that can lead to having abandonment feelings as an adult can range so widely. They could be that your parents had another baby and now you're no longer the baby in the family. It could be something so simple as that. Or your parents could be late picking you up from the daycare center, and for a half an hour you were panicked that they actually didn't love you and left you there and you would never see them again. And when they finally showed up, you felt so small and dependent and ashamed of being so puny.
mhm,
And the things that can trigger this feeling in children are very small. And most of those things that children go through are somewhat repetitive. For instance, if it's the birth of a new baby, it doesn't happen once, the baby's around. So it's every day you have to cope with this. Or if one of your parents is an alcoholic, that's not something that just happened once. If that were the case, maybe the rest of the experiences would kind of, soften it. But it's a constant thing. Let's say it's your mother. Your mother's an alcoholic. Well, she's always has a relationship with alcohol that's slightly more important than her relationship with you. And although she loves you dearly, she's not completely yours because she really belongs to the alcohol. So there's this chronic kind of lack of intense connection that you are barely aware of, because when you're young, you might not even know what an alcoholic is or that alcohol is bad.
mm,
So it's the things that can create this kind of a feeling of abandonment and create this woundedness. It can be very, very subtle, and they can also be very large. You can have the death of a parent, or a parent can actually abandon the family, and things like that can happen. Um, but these experiences that we have in childhood are not necessarily things we can think back and say, oh, this happened and this happened. It might take a little work to try to piece it together to understand, kind of where you're coming from,
right,
because that it's just kind of lost to the history and all the details kind of dissolve.
right.